And Heather, we alluded to your Harbaugh story earlier, and certainly a lot of people saw you earlier today on Get Up talking about what his future looks like. You painted, and perhaps rightfully so, a reasonably upbeat picture, considering he does have a contract extension, but it comes with a lot of explanation, doesn't it?
It sure does, Paul, and I think it works in the favor of Michigan because essentially it gets cheaper to fire him as the years go on, and he got his salary cut in half to about $4 million, and the buyout is $4 million if they fire him in 2021 after this season, but it would go down $1 million each year after that. So one of the things I thought was interesting was Athletic Director Ward Manuel's comments in that he's not going to set a minimum amount of games that Harbaugh has to win this year. That's why I think he's got some wiggle room. You know, they spent a lot of time talking about this and discussing the future of the program, and Jim Harbaugh said, we have a plan. I don't think it's going to be fast-forwarded that they're all of a sudden going to be a college football playoff contender, but I do sense, as Ward Manuel said, that there is patience on the part of this administration to give him some more time to see if he could win and win big.
Well, the only good news last year is that he hadn't have the Ohio State game, so at least he's not coming off of a loss here. Let me get to the college football playoff expansion conversation, which is very prominent, as you well know, and it just seems like with each week someone else chimes in, and we don't have the luxury of the conference meetings this year. We have they're being done virtually in some places, but as you talk to people, and nobody talks to more people inside that bubble than you do, where are we right now?
Well, we're waiting for the commissioners to meet in June in Chicago. That is when they're going to have another CFP meeting, and they're going to be in person for the first time in over a year. That's significant, but I think the more significant, deeper dive into the conversation will come a couple days later in Dallas when those commissioners meet with the playoffs board of managers, which is the 11 university presidents and chancellors who have the power to change the playoff. You know, Bill Hancock, the CFP executive director, has told me repeatedly change is not imminent. But the fact that they are really diving into these scenarios in greater depth is important, and that shows that they're not just going to roll out of bed when this 12-year contract ends and say, oh, we're going to expand the playoff. If they're going to do it, they need to plan a few years in advance to make it happen.
So Heather, let's move the calendar forward a couple of weeks. At the end of that week, when the commissioners meet and then the management committee meets, I know guessing is difficult, but where do you think we'll be then?
That's so hard to say. You know, one commissioner told me, said, you might fly out to Dallas and we might not do anything at all in terms of making any news or decisions about it. But it's also possible that those commissioners, the 10 FBS commissioners and Notre Dame athletic director Jack Swarbrick, could say, all right, you know what? We like this model. We're going to present it to those university presidents and chancellors for their approval. That would be huge news in itself. So there's a possibility that that happens. You know, ACC Commissioner Jim Phillips is new. He said he's not opposed to expansion, but before he solidifies his take on it, he wants to learn more about it. The new Pac-12 commissioner came out and said he's in favor of expansion. He was on the job for about 5 minutes. Greg Sankey, as you know, has said repeatedly, has worked, it can work, and continue to work. So we know where he stands on it at this moment. But all of those voices in the room have to come to a unanimous agreement on what they want to do before presenting it to the next level.
Heather, I'm not suggesting this has been a dramatic seismic shift here, but it does seem a lot more upbeat, and we're also farther along in the contract, and we're coming out of COVID. But as you look back, is there anything that has happened that maybe has pushed these people farther down the road in expansion, other than what you just alluded to? We have 2 new commissioners.
Not necessarily. I don't think there's one particular thing that's a turning point, but I will say in an extremely unusual fall of 2020 with the COVID-19 having changed schedules, conference only, and we saw so much talk about Cincinnati and Coastal Carolina and Louisiana, I think there was more of a talk, even more so from Group of 5 commissioners to say, okay, now wait a minute, and just raise some more questions about fairness, inclusion, the appearance of fairness. You know, I mean, that's what this is all about when you talk about expansion, is the appearance of fairness. What's going to happen to the, quote, little guys in this new system, regardless of what it is? Is there going to be a guarantee? And if there is that number 8 team going to be lined up against Alabama every team and knocked out before you can blink your eyes? So, you know, what does it all look like? I think just the oddity of 2020 may have helped push a little bit of the discussion a little further, but they've been talking about this since about 2019, the last championship, where everybody was really there with Mississippi State President Mark Keenum and all of those other presidents. That's when they kind of really started saying, you know what, we're talking about this.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming, sports, and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.